The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to AWCI's webinar. Today's webinar, Inspiring Leadership, is a conversation with three members of AWCI's Emerging Leaders. I am Anne-Marie Salvatelli, AWCI's Director of Education, and I will be your host for today's presentation. Also joining me as co-host and moderator is Chris Williams, AWCI's Director of Membership. Before we start, a few housekeeping items. All attendees are in listen-only mode. Should you have a question at any time during the broadcast, please submit it using the question box in your GoToWebinar dashboard. We will have a Q&A at the end of our presentation and make every attempt to get all your questions answered. Now we're going to hear from Chris about the Emerging Leaders Program.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Established in 2021, AWCI's Emerging Leaders Program seeks to actively engage contractors, suppliers, and manufacturers in the wall and ceiling industry. The program seeks out those individuals who desire to build a self-sustaining leadership style. The foundation of this program is education that encircles the three pillars of our industry: contractors, manufacturers, and suppliers. AWCI's Emerging Leaders Program provides an immersive experience that teaches leadership skills and includes networking, class of emerging leaders. www.awci.org.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And now I would like to introduce you to our panelists. Nick Carrillo is a construction industry and nonprofit trade association professional. His diverse experience in the industry includes working on job sites, selling building materials as a specialty product salesman, completing job site evaluations and contractor trainings as a technical sales representative, also serving as vice president for International Contractor Association, and is currently vice president for Western Wall and Ceiling Contractors Association. Next up is Ryan Moorman. He is a senior estimator with Performance Contracting in Indianapolis for 7 years. After graduating from Purdue University with a construction management degree, he has been part of building some amazing projects across the Midwest. As he continues his career in construction, he not only looks forward to building more successful projects, but also looks forward to helping develop the next wave of construction workforces and innovators. Dan Weiss is the president of Weiss Drywall and Weiss Offsite. He has a passion for entrepreneurship, building unstoppable teams, and pushing his creative. Third generation in the construction industry, Dan brings years of knowledge to the table with a goal of leaving the world a better place than he found it. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hi, gentlemen. I'll extend my welcome as well, and I will apologize in advance as I'm in a vehicle right now, but we want to make sure this is an important webinar. To get the three of you on here, you're both in various stages of your leadership journeys. And so my first question is going to be, can you share with us a little bit about your leadership journey so far? What important insights have you learned along the way? And Dan, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Nick and Ryan.
So I got thrown in the fire as a young man at the ripe age of 21 years old. I became a corporate safety director. And so at the time I was the CEO's grandson and the president's son. So that was very interesting, right? To learn to come in and just it's hard, right? Like I had to be really humble and had to really work with our team, bond our team together. And then also, be able to really know know what I knew very well, right? But then also not know things, right? And be able to have good dialogue with people. So, yeah, that's kind of how I started in the industry. And then, coming up through the years, I did that for about a decade. And then I became VP about the age of 29 and had to start leading more senior team members. And then, became president a few years ago.
Awesome, Dan. I want to follow up real quick because you mentioned you're the grandson of the company's owner. Your name's on the company. What kind of impacts that had on that leadership journey? You mentioned becoming VP at 29, the positives and the negatives.
So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of positives, right? People, generally speaking, I probably get a little more buy-in from people, right? Just because whether they humor me or not, I don't know. But, you get more buy-in from people because your last name is on the building. However, though, it also probably potentially, causes a lot of, or can cause dissension because your last name is on the building, right? A lot of people think that you're just there because of, being family. However, everybody probably realizes that we're in the family and we're in a business, right? So my family is also not dumb, right? For lack of a better word. They know that I'm not going to lead the company, right? And be in these positions if you don't have, the character to do it. You don't have the ability and the skill sets to do it. Otherwise it's like, it's not what's best for our business, right? And for our people.
That's great information. Nick, same question to you about some of your insights about your leadership journey so far. What have you learned along the way?
Yeah, thanks. So I share a similar story in being second generation. I've been around job sites since I was a kid. I think my dad, who's in the industry, left work he jumped off scaffold to come to my birth. So I've been around construction my entire life. And when I started in this industry, I was reluctantly forced into my job. So I want full disclosure for everybody. While I stand very positively towards this industry, I tried to avoid it. It breaks down your body and all these misconceptions about the industry. Then I got into the industry and I started as a plasterer by trade, and I worked for some family. And so I know Dan's same pain of working for family, but mine was a little different. My name didn't share the owner's name. It was a loose connection, but everybody know who my family was. So I was pushed a lot harder. And so since I entered, I was challenged in do you really know what you claim to know? You better know your S, or else we're going to check you on everything you do. So I became a traveling foreman and superintendent for a plastering company and did all of the out of town work because I was the young single person who could go stay in hotels for long periods of time. That gave me kind of some education into autonomy and being a self-starter and pushing on my own without having anybody kind of pushing me along the way to make sure I get up and start the job on time every day. That led me into an opportunity to then go into the material distribution world and be a technical sales representative. So I was working in the field and put in my name for an application. And when I was 21 years old, I went out to California and I immediately took on a territory of half the state and helped people with architectural presentations. So you guys know them as AI Lunch and Learns. I would go do job site failure evaluations or pre-construction meetings. So if you can kind of imagine this, the 21-year-old kid with a clean hard hat and kind of scuffed boots was coming out to a project explaining why stucco was cracking on the third floor of a corridor on a school. And I'm standing around quite the seasoned circle of individuals that are trying to take my words and as actually being correct. So that gave me another step in kind of understanding how to communicate upwards in the environment I was in, because I was very fortunate and very fortunate to have an opportunity early. That and the continuation of that led me to transfer to another state, and then I was afforded another opportunity to work for an international contractor association. At that time, I kind of didn't even really understand what associations did. We worked with them in partnership, but I dove in, and in that, I had another self-starting kind of trial by fire, and I just jumped in and started traveling around my territory, learning the whole way through. kind of understanding what I did and gave everything I had. And then that afforded me the opportunity to come work for where I am now, which is the WWCCA, as Vice President for a Contractor Association. So I would say, Chris, that's a little bit of my path, but I wanted to emphasize kind of the struggles along the way, because those exact struggles, I think, are what afforded me such a rapid growth into the position I'm at now. I'll say I'm 37 and I feel old, but I'm very young in this industry, and I'm aware of the opportunity that's been afforded to me, but it's not without effort. And so that's kind of a little bit of the path to what brings me to everybody here today and to talk to you and be a part of this, and appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we appreciate having you. They're not struggles, they're learning experiences.
There
Ryan,
you go. Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so I'm a little different than Nick and Dan in the sense that I really didn't grow up in construction. I did a lot of hands-on woodworking and stuff with my dad as I grew up, but kind of fell into construction in college, really. I wanted to be an architect, and then kind of went down the road and decided that architecture wasn't really the thing that you should focus on doing. So I went more into the construction side and started my career out in Chicago. And it was a big move for me, coming from a small town and going into a big city. And I've had the luxury of working with two great companies over the past 12, 13 years. And I've got to follow and observe a lot of different leadership styles, leadership designs, purposefully or non-purposefully by the people themselves. So it's been an interesting experience. I've got the luxury of doing about everything you can in a specialty contractor industry when it comes from project management, estimating, technology, business, product development, things like that. So I've had a great ride here, and right now I would say that I'm not so much in a branch manager, general manager type of position. I'm more down in the trenches, but I still consider myself a leader, even though I don't have 5, 8, 10, 12, 20, 60 people under me. And in the sense that we try to build not a bottom up, but a good foundation with leaders among each other, helping develop a solid office that we work in here and across the country.
And Ryan's on one of those people I mentioned earlier on that journey with the Emerging Leaders Program. So Ryan, we thank you for joining us today. Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Chris. All right, the next one, we kind of have two-part question here. So we'll start off with Nick. As a leader, what have you found most effective in bringing new employees to understand and support the organization's vision?
So I don't necessarily onboard new employees in my role, but I do have an opportunity to kind of paint a vision for the organization and kind of champion that vision. So that's what I'll speak to more so, is kind of how I've gone about painting the vision. And I really try to put it in 2 points, or one of them is say what you're going to do, say what you're doing, and then say what you did. I kind of use this mantra when we're communicating externally in a marketing atmosphere, but I also try to utilize this in an internal environment. I've been around a lot of places where you kind of look at the old guard, and it used to be paint this wall in 3 hours, don't ask me why, just get it done, and then I'll see you after that 3 hours is done, and they'd walk away and it was over. And so I've always kind of been of the, well, tell me why, just help me understand. I'll do it in 3 hours, no problem. Just give me an understanding of why, so I can kind of be invested. And so that kind of helped me create this, say what you're going to do, say what you're doing, and say what you did, because it gets an investment and it gets buy-in from your team. They become invested. So if you're going to your team, you tell them, look, this is something that we're planning to do. It may not even come to fruition, but we want you guys to understand some of our forecasts as an organization. And then when you're in it, give them updates, give them explanations. This is where we stand. This is some of the things that we're looking to change as we go forward. And then once it's done, a lot of times in our industry in construction, I like to say there's no finish line. It's in the field, different. You punch out. You're very lucky. You get to punch out. You see your job completed. You get to go back, tell people you finished the job. I think all of us on this panel drive through our cities going, "Yep, built that. Yep, worked on that. Did that." That's great. But when you get into a leadership role, you're not given that opportunity to kind of look back and appreciate the completion of something because you're already looking forward. So revisiting what you've done does not only for you, but it also helps you kind of appreciate what your team has been able to accomplish. So it's a selfish effort, but it's also for the team. So say what you're going to do what you say what you're doing, and then say what you did is one of the ones I like. And then establishing very clear expectations and boundaries has been one of the best. So allow a lot of freedom, but understanding what the end goal is so that everybody buys into the same thing. And then those who know me know I smile all the time. Have fun. Really, like think about all the hours you spend with your work family versus your home, and it's almost equal. We spend a lot of time at work, and if we're going in and we're just trying to dive into it and just get into the monotony of the day-to-day, you lose sight. And so if you can just look up, breathe, and have a little fun, and sometimes as the leader, you've got to be the one who's smiling and being that champion, do it. So that's just a little look into answer there.
Thank you, Nick. So Nick, following up, what do you find the most fulfilling about your role?
I love watching somebody come with an idea, and I always have a tendency to think I know the right way to do things, and it took a lot of years for me to understand how to kind of step back and allow other visions to come to the surface and then try to champion those visions. So the best feeling in the world is when somebody comes with a vision that you didn't see yourself, and you give them total freedom, but manage kind of like, hey, let's try to accomplish A, B, and C as the goal. And they enthusiastically come to you with the accomplishment and success of their vision coming to life. And that vision can be anything in their given career. That is the most satisfying thing in the world. And you feel a part of it just by championing it. So it's watching others succeed is the greatest joy in the world.
Thank you. Ryan, you're up next, and then Dan will put you on deck there. So Ryan, as a leader, what have you found most effective when you're working with new employees and trying to have them understand your company's vision?
Yeah, so a big kind of in the same thing with Nick. I don't really onboard directly other than new estimators, at least at this point now, but from a culture and vision level, I try to make a real concerted effort to visit with new employees, introduce myself, make them feel part of the team from day one, give them the warm and fuzzy, of the office. Everyone here that works here knows what it's like, knows it's fun, knows there's still hard work that's got to be done, but sometimes it's a little scary coming in, especially as a college graduate, but even sometimes coming from another company or another industry even is a different type of stress or attitude that comes from another office. And then kind of on that same point is to get as much information out of these new employees as you can. A new college graduate may know new programs or new softwares that you've never heard of, or someone coming from another industry may do something safety or something quality different. And it's something that you can look at and just to really get to know people on a personal level, on a business level, and understand where they've come from so that you can maybe help evolve your office, your people in here to better the company. And there's a reason that they're here, right? Someone thought they were a valuable asset to the company. So getting that information out of them and sharing your information with them is only going to help move the office forward.
Thank you. And Dan, what about yourself as a leader? What do you find most effective about bringing onboarding new employees? And then what are some of the challenges you faced as an emerging leader?
So bringing on new employees, onboarding them and getting them in tune with the vision. I mean, for me, it's like this quote rings in my head. The moment you get tired of telling your vision, right, is just about the time that your employees are catching it, right, or your team is catching it. So I speak our vision regularly, often, relate things back to the vision, right, when things happen. Also, core values are tremendously important. We typically assess by our core values, right? We look at our core values. We root things back of a team member doing to our core values, right? And that's how we continue to get people both assimilated to our culture and also get them to align with our culture. And Nick and Ryan also said a lot of other amazing points that I won't repeat here on that. But the most fulfilling, though, it's truly, I think we can all say it's a pure joy to watch others grow, to watch others succeed, and to do far more than what they even thought that they could do. I think the other thing that's really cool for me to see is when I really see a team gel. Oftentimes we're putting new teams together. I mean, gosh, every job site we're on is a new team, right? Like, the plumber's a different plumber than the last job. Our foreman's different, superintendent's different, right? Every time we're on it. And so anytime we can really see a team gel, and that can take months, it can take weeks, it can take years. But anytime we see that team gel, it's so cool when people can just know what the other's thinking, right? And just work as like almost one body. It's really neat to see.
Do you guys take the time? So one of the things I love is learning people's story. I believe every person on earth has an interesting story. And so I'm almost like an interviewer, and I go to everybody and just ask me to tell me about themselves. And I have found out the most interesting things from people that I never would expect. Like Dan, to call you out, and how you were a collegiate shooter, right? So that is fascinating to me because I was very unsuccessful at trap shooting once, and then you were a collegiate shooter. So everybody's story is so magnificent beyond just what you do for work. Sometimes work is just what supports the life you want to live. And so I want to know that person. And so I spend a lot of time asking people about themselves. What are some fears? What do you like to do? Tell me about your past. Tell me a really exciting story. Just hamming it up. And I love it. I love hearing people's story. And I think it helps me understand the people better. It helps me remember people. Yeah, it's a blast.
Yeah, and I would say, Nick, to that point, I think the hard part about taking on a leadership role is finding or making the time to do that, right? Because you still have your daily job, you still have your tasks that need to happen. And I mean, it takes time to get to know people, and it's hard sometimes to put your stuff aside and say, hey, I want to know, like, I want to get to know you. I want to hear your story. So I think it's cool. I think it's one of those things you've got to really focus on it, and it's very important.
Yeah.
Thank you. Certainly some things we can all take away from and work on a little bit more. So Chris, I'll turn that over to you. You're up next.
Yeah, guys, I think that the emotional intelligence aspect that you kind of hit on there is one of the more important aspects of leadership. And so, Dan, I want to go to you here. How does your leadership reflect your values?
We lose Chris?
I think so. So,
Guys, can you hear me?
now we can, yes.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was talking a little bit about the emotional intelligence aspect of leadership that I think is gaining in importance here. And so, Dan, I want to go back to you about how does your leadership style reflect your values as a leader?
So a lot for me. I deeply care about people. That has always kind of been like, even since I was a little kid, right? Just making sure other people are taken care of. And so that goes back to me, right? I just like, and what Nick mentioned earlier, which totally made me remind something, like knowing yourself is hugely important, right? Being so introspective and trying to understand why you do what you do when you do it, right? And trying to, that's what I always try to do. I try to like dissect myself so I can understand me, because then if I can understand me, then I can relate to team members in a different way. So I just deeply care for people. I want to see people do well. I want to see people succeed, right? I'm the first one to say, like, let's give that person, an ill-performing, team member, like, let's give them grace, right? Let's try to coach them up. Let's try to, correct this action. Let's not just get rid of them. Maybe they have something else going on in their life. Maybe their, home life's a wreck right now, whatever that is, right? And so for me, it's like just being with our people. I want to see them, just like in the last question, I want to see them accomplish more than what they even think is possible. And oftentimes that probably isn't going to take place in 2 months or 1 month. This is 6 months, this is a year, this is a decade, and so I don't know. I think for me, it's like, and I'd like to have what is perceived as almost a flat organizational chart, even though everything ultimately washes up to me. But however, though, it's like, I want to have the person, I wouldn't even want to have our leaders subordinate themselves, because maybe in a moment, like maybe the foreman on a job, right? Maybe a superintendent needs to subordinate his position to a foreman because they know that better. And so really, I want the best person leading at any time for any given situation, because, I don't know everything that everybody else knows. So I think, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but there you go.
Well, it does. And to build on that, what qualities, what do you identify in an employee as an emerging leader? How do you, when you see someone, do you just know that they're going to be on that path, or is there something else?
So I think it's the same way that I identify somebody that I think is going to, is a seasoned leader. The characteristics, in my opinion, are the same. It's the difference oftentimes is the confidence level in that, or the maturity level that they have. I'm looking for like things like extreme ownership, like where even if the situation was totally out of their control, right, and it went bad, they own it, because ultimately I own it, right? It's my fault too, as as the president. Being calm under pressure, just being real. Furthermore, they say what they think. Obviously, in saying what you think, you have situational awareness, but also like what I would just answer, they can subordinate their ideas, their position, they can subordinate their ego, right, and whatever that may be, because sometimes we're wrong. Shocking. And so and then also that grit, the ability to just not give up. That's the other thing. For me, it's like, because oftentimes, our first reaction is when we're dealing with a hard situation is fight or flight, right? And oftentimes it's like, sometimes it's appropriate to get out, but most of the time in our industry we can't, right? Because we're contractually bound to continue to go. So we have to continue to grind it out, and we have to continue to go.
Thanks, Dan. Nick and Ryan, anything you'd like to add in terms of kind of what we're looking for in an emerging leader? What traits that you see coming out of them?
I could kind of pile on with what Dan was saying. Was the one thing that I've noticed with especially new hires out of college that really have no experience, other than a few years of college, which doesn't really give you real life experience as much as we all want. But I think the big one is people spending the time to try to figure it out. Look for solutions to problems before asking for help, or instead of, and you come and say there's a problem, but you say, hey, maybe we should try this. Let's give this a shot. I feel like that's like the first signal as a new hire of someone that could potentially be a great leader in after some experience in industry, really can help drive home and that's kind of what Dan was saying, is like, just go get it, right? Finish the job. Take on the hard challenges.
Anne-Marie?
Thank you. All right, guys, here's one. So imagine that you had 15 minutes to yourself, 15 free minutes. How would you use this time to better yourself? And before you answer that, also, how do you alter what you do to have a really positive work-life balance? So Ryan, we're going to kick it off with you. Again, what would you do for 15 minutes to better yourself if you had that luxury of time?
So this is a really hard one. I'm glad you started with me on this one. So 15 minutes is it's an interesting concept because there's two sides, which goes to your second point of a work-life balance. So do you spend 15? So there's one avenue, I guess. I won't ask you a question. I'll answer with what my answer to this is. Spend some time delegating, organizing, structuring my day so I can get complete, finished as fast as I can, the most effective way I can. So when I'm not at work, I'm 100% engaged at home, right? Outside of work, doing golf or activities outside of work that has no involvement. And so that would be the work aspect of it. And then the other would be really spending it with your family, like taking that 15 minutes and eating breakfast at home before you leave for the morning, sitting down at a table and eating with your family. Like it's kind of this like two-sided business aspect versus personal aspect, which again comes down to the work-life balance, and it's a very difficult thing to do. And I'm afforded here at PCI the ability to kind of not come and go, but if something comes up, I can go home, but I'll work at night or I'll make it up. Get the job done. So it's really this great, the atmosphere in your culture in your office really helps you get that work-life balance, kind of leveled out as best you can.
And Ryan, hanging with you for one more question here. What are the most important roles of a leader? Thinking of vision, strategizing, developing talent. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so the most important aspect, I think, as a leader, as someone who's driving the bus, say, is to get people in the right seat. And Dan kind of mentioned it too, is if someone's struggling, it's not necessarily that they're a bad employee. It's that maybe they just aren't good at that or aren't enjoying it. And maybe getting people in the right seats or adding seats to the bus and adding descriptions of job titles, really getting people doing what they love makes the job go better, makes the office go better, makes the industry successful across all projects.
Most definitely. Thank you. Dan, so again, we're looking at if you had those free 15 minutes, how would you use that time to better yourself and then how do you do your work-life balance and important roles as a leader?
So 15 minutes myself. I'm going to do probably one of three things, and unfortunately, or weird enough, they all start with an R. I'm going to reflect, I'm going to read, or I'm going to research. I'm kind of it's like I'm going to think about what we're doing, where we're going, right? Or what I'm doing, where I'm going, right? Or I'm going to read a book that's going to better me, or I'm going to do some research that's going to better my knowledge or for the business or whatever. Maybe it's even, a book on parenting, whatever that looks like. But in general, I'm a bit of a research junkie. I like to find a topic. I like to truly dig into it until I have a pretty good understanding of what that's like. So work-life balance, what's that? Essentially it's like, I don't know, I have different viewpoints on this. So, it's like we all have a timeline, right? And we all know what our beginning of our timeline is, and none of us know what our end of our timeline is, right? And we have to cram everything into there that we do, right? Including work, including family, including, taking time to ourselves, exercise. So for me, and this is oftentimes even reflected in our team as well, it's like we are all mixing it into there, right? So, you know, I might be working at 5 a.m. and then go exercise at 6:30, you know, for 45 minutes or an hour, then have breakfast with my kids, then go to the office, and then, you know, take off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, go ride my mountain bike, go take a shower, get back to work. You know, it's like, and just cramming all that in there. Because, you know, ultimately we don't have to be sitting at our desks in order to be bettering ourselves, in order to be working hard, right? We could be, you know, I could be out riding my mountain bike and reflecting on what I need to do, reflecting on what our team's doing, reflecting on, you know, strategy. Just that those times are important, right? And just trying to be an optimal human being. Spending time with my kids, you know, I mean, in my situation, I'm potentially raising the 4th generation of our business. So, I mean, as weird as it is to say, it's like, you know, I got to be a really good dad, you know, not just for our business, but ultimately just to be a good dad for my kids. You know, whether they're in our business or not, I don't know, but to be there for them, you know, and then I'm also a husband, you know, which is my first priority before any of that, you know, is to my wife. So, you know, it's a lot to cram in. And, you know, I don't know. That's how I think, though, too. I don't compartmentalize much. So we're kind of all there. It all is hodgepodge together. And then, you know, what's the most important roles of a leader? To me, it just, you have to know yourself. You know, maybe I'm a really good visionary, but I'm not really good at implementing my vision. That's the case in a lot of ways, right? So I have to know who I am as a person to be able to then say, okay, how do we need to hire to the weakness, right? And so maybe there's a CEO out there who's, you know, obviously really good at operations, right? But they're not good at like trying to understand what products they need to develop to go. So they need to go hire somebody to do product. So I think that it's a, you know, it's a multifaceted question, and it really depends on the person you are and knowing yourself.
And Nick, to you, please.
So, Dan, do you do? Thank you, Henry. I'll get to those questions. I want to ask Dan. Do you do a lot of like disc profiles, personality tests? You know, those like self-discovery things, Ryan, too. Do you guys do those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done quite a few. And I've also got assessed like professionally by like a, anyway, yeah, by like a business psychologist, like a leadership development person. Yeah.
I bring that up because I don't know who our audience is, but that's probably been one of the strongest things for me as a leader is doing those tests for myself, but also doing the ones where learning how to communicate with other personality types. And so that's what I would say, like, it's an expansion of what you said, Dan. So I don't want to repeat too much, but like when you understand the way you're perceived and then you understand the way your preferred communication style is, and then you understand the personality types that you're speaking to, it has been so empowering, and we've been able to accomplish so much more understanding that. And that comes through, honestly, you could perceive them positively, negatively, or neutrally, but sometimes they're perceived as a burden. I don't have the time to do this profile, or this is ridiculous. I know who I am. I don't need a test to tell me. I remember doing one, it took like, I think I had 40 seconds twice to circle words that I identified with. And it was the most impactful test I've ever done. Like it taught me so much. So when I look for characteristics of a future leader, what I always try to identify is, are they watching how they communicate with each person? I think that's one of the strongest values as a leader, is understanding who they're talking to. So building on what you were saying, Dan and Ryan. In my 15 minutes, I look at it a little bit different. So I was just talking to somebody. I write down my goals on paper by hand, and I put it on my wall. And I do that about every 3 years because they're big goals. And so whenever I'm trying to do something, when I think about that 15 minutes, I break up everything into bite-sized pieces. Not to be cliche, but the how do you bite an elephant thing. So that 15-minute freedom that I have is more so to accomplish what I'm looking for specifically. And in the immediate, I am not bilingual right now, and I'm hoping to become bilingual. So right now, my 15 minutes are going into Spanish and studying Spanish and trying to learn that. And out there, if anybody knows any good tutors, I'm listening. But yeah, so that's how I look at it, is I take that 15 minutes and I try to compound that 15 minutes into a greater goal. And that could be, and that's how I look at it, because it could be a book, it could be reflection, it could be research, it could be time with the family, because my goal may be to spend more time with my family, to coach a kid's team, whatever it might be, to go out with my friends. It just depends. And so I see that 15 minutes not as a specific thing, but an opportunity to compound. And then work-life balance, that is so open-ended. I mean, my perception of work, I like to say, this isn't my job, this is my life. That what I do in this industry is who I am, and I really identify in my role, and I love and bleed this industry so much that it's become who I am. So saying work-life balance is a very difficult thing for me to grasp, because I've become this, but others might try to identify it, or others might identify it in a different manner. So when we talk about work-life balance, really just what gives you your ultimate happiness, and try your best to reach that, I think would give you the best work-life balance you can. Now, don't be a slap ass and like show up 3 hours a day and then go party all the rest of the days. But like, find some balance.
Well said. Chris, over to you, please.
Yeah, Nick, that 3 hours a day is at AWCI's convention only. That's April 4th through 7th, Grapevine, Texas, coming up. So early bird deadlines tomorrow if you want to register and get the early bird rate. So I'll put that pitch in. But Nick, I want to stick with you here, and then we'll go to Dan and Ryan and talk a little bit about it. What advice would you give to a member of our audience that's looking to develop themselves as a leader in the construction industry? Well, what's the one piece of advice that you guys would say is...
All right, I think I got it. So what's the one piece of advice? And the thing that I always try to share with everybody is slow down. Slow down. And it's what I have to tell myself. So I talk to the man in the mirror about this as well. It's social media and the internet and the world around you moves very rapidly, and it gives this false sense that the world moves quickly, and your rise to wealth and your rise to a title that you want is immediate. And nobody highlights the walk in the mud, the crawl under the barbed wire, the getting shot, the getting knocked down, the standing back up. That doesn't make for good visual display. All we see is the champions holding the trophies, and we see the riches flashed on the screen. And so what I try to say is, in construction, it's very similar, because we're looking at technology and all these CEOs that technology is adapted very fast. And as millennials, we've watched technology move rapidly. And so it gives us this perception that the world works that way. But just taking a breath and understanding that your career is a lot different than a smartphone, and then different than social media, and to take the time and slow down and listen to what's being said around you. If you don't know something, say you don't know it, and respect everybody equally. And that's what I try to share with everybody.
Dan?
So to go along with what Nick said, I mean, I think that's great. For me, I always think about it's being humble. Truly, like, when you're dealing with, our industry is full of people who have been in the industry and are experts who've been doing what they've been doing for 15 to 50 years, right? And nobody expects you to know everything. So it's like know what you know and don't go further than that. It's okay in our industry, and some people will be in the heat of the moment. We have some people who are, type A demanding in our industry, but being humble and just understanding that it's okay to not know everything. Ask a lot of questions. Our industry is so willing to teach you, right? They are so willing to help you understand. They are so willing to be, most of the time, patient. But you also have to be there to absorb, because not everybody is going to spoon feed us information how we want to be spoon fed. So being humble, asking questions,
Awesome.
And Ryan.
Cool. Yeah, so you guys kind of did some touchy-feely comments. I'll give an analytic, a little more day-to-day task-based. Is don't be afraid to take on challenging projects, tasks, things way outside your comfort zone, not close to your comfort zone, but way outside, and push yourself to learn. And then it gives you the opportunity to learn from others, get their knowledge, get their expertise, and build your result to the problem or the task at hand. Don't use someone else's result. Use other people's knowledge to create your own result.
I love it. Man, anytime, it's insane how many people are willing to help too. So you said go outside your comfort zone, and you said, like, I've been shaking, my palms shaking walking to an office to ask a question just because I want to learn, but I still do it. So I go outside the comfort zone, but it's somebody who might be perceived as unreachable, right? But if you go in and you go in there with honest intention of just learning, insane how many people just want to offer their knowledge, and they will reach out to you and they will follow up with you, and all you did was ask the question. So if you want to learn from somebody, definitely ask the question. Yeah.
All right, so bringing it on home here, gentlemen. And a lot of this, just to recap, I think, because you certainly were pretty thorough. Ryan, we'll start off with you. Through your growth in leadership in life, what have you learned about yourself, and what are you still learning? So whether that's getting feedback from peers or family, or doing a DISC profile or Myers-Briggs or anything like that.
So I would say that I'm learning way more than I've learned currently. I'm still on the growth side of leadership on this, and I would say the main things that I have learned and I'm still getting better at is looking outside of the now or the tomorrow. It's getting the bigger picture, getting the urgency of today out of the way to look at the future. And then inside that is getting a better at managing requests and having people hold on, give me a second, let me get with you tomorrow. And that's something I really struggle with. So that's something that I'm still learning how to do, is how to manage my time helping other people. So I'm always willing to help and want to help, but just need to keep learning how to do that and still have an effective career myself, and not ruin my productive day or tasks that I'm doing that day.
And Nick, your thoughts?
So I'll be completely candid in, like, specifically to me. So one of the things that was shocking to me that I didn't know about myself was I like to think before I speak, and the pause before answering can be perceived as disinterest or that I don't care about something. And so I had to learn that before talking, or while I gathered my thoughts, giving just kind of a little primer of, I'm just giving some thought to it. I'll answer you in just a sec. Let me give some thought. I didn't, and you know what? Maybe that perception was never actually realized, but you learn that could be a perception from it. So just that subtle thing impacted the way I communicate so much. And that was through just self-discovery, through these tests and, beyond. And then still learning. Once you learn a little bit, you realize you pretty much know nothing. So what I've learned is, like, I'll never have a grasp of this. And also, when you become a parent, you learn your parents were just as terrified as you are. And when you thought they had it together, maybe they were still a little bit as nervous as you are as a parent. So everybody shares in the same struggles. It's just worn differently on the outside. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. And Dan?
So I got a story. This is years ago. I was probably 29, 30 years old, right? And we were kind of going through a rough patch, and we had a new CFO come into the company. And, he's still getting his legs and feet up under him. Well, and so at the time, like, I was pretty, in tune with the business, pretty in tune with the financials, and, still turning things over to him because we had a delay in between controllers or CFOs. And so we get 6 months down the road, and he's like, "Hey, Dan, like, you hire good people, right? You have a good team. Like, let your team do what they're supposed to do." So he's like, "You're micromanaging me." And so, like, I was like, "Oh man, like, I'm kind of stressed out." And so when I kind of got stressed out, I kind of take the bull by the horns, which can be perceived as, and at the time it was, micromanaging. So since then, it's like led me to leave to understand, like, oh man, like, then looking at other areas of our business, like, oh gosh, we need redundancy built into our business, right? Because if it's me or if it's a single point of failure, that's a big issue. So it kind of led me, that one instance led me to be like, oh man, I need to look at the more worldview of our business to try to understand where we're at, what we're doing, where we're going, what team members do we have in what seats, and where do we need another person? Where do we need help? How can we do that? But if that wouldn't have happened, if that situation wouldn't have happened, I would not have learned that. I would not have learned how to continue to delegate more and more, and ultimately learn how to truly, grow our business more and more. So thankful for, our team members being able to just be blatantly honest, which is great.
Thank you. And so, gentlemen, if we can just go around and kind of think of, shout out to the attendees, 3 things that you would recommend to future leaders. So Ryan, we'll go the same order. Ryan, Nick, and Dan, please.
All right, so 3 things that I would recommend. One, as I've mentioned already, is go to others with potential solutions. Don't just complain or point out all the problems. Try to figure out solutions before you bring those up. Next is just understand that trust is earned, not given. So work to gain people's trust. Don't just expect it because you're in a leadership role. And then listen to others as much as you can. Don't try to tell them they're wrong or right, or just don't react right away. Listen, absorb it, and then figure out what you want to do with that information.
And Nick?
I pick Ryan's answers.
That's easy.
Those are great. So, the gut punch for me was not everything's about you. So a lot of times in this industry, it's very direct and it's very pointed, the conversation, and it's easy to take things personal and think it was directly your fault or they're yelling at you. Just understand, not everything's about you. Be on time. It needs to be said. We have a very casual mindset that's evolving in the industry, but you still need to be respectful of other people's time. And then lastly, don't be afraid to ask questions, like we touched on earlier. I mean, just hit it hard. Ask everybody around you. We have a massive amount of brain trust leaving this industry in retirement, and pretty soon they're going to go on their boats and they're going to go in their hunting lodges, and we're not going to be able to access them. Tap that resource. Get to know everything you can.
Dan.
You guys just don't leave me with much, okay? Like, so, ask questions. Nick did a great job elaborating on that. Knowing yourself, I know I probably said that multiple times through this, but knowing yourself, knowing how you need to talk to yourself in order to get yourself either motivated, or knowing how your personality type interfaces with other personality types is huge. Knowing when to talk too much and talk too little, right, is also really big, depending on who you're talking to. So tailoring yourself to your audience. And also in our industry, gosh, try something new. That is the biggest thing. Oftentimes, we'll see solutions that's, maybe in our industry, somebody said, we tried that in 1992, right? But yet technology has very vastly changed since 1992, right? And maybe something's different, something's the same, process is different or whatever, but you know what, try something new. If you fail at it again, okay, then shelve it for another decade or two, but try something new.
Awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We are respective of everyone's time, so everyone can get a few minutes back today. But on behalf of AWCI, we would like to thank all of our attendees for joining us on the webinar today. And we'd like to thank Nick, Ryan, and Dan for sharing their time with us. And gentlemen, we really appreciate your honesty and insights into leadership. So it's just been a pleasure getting to know you, the three of you, during this time. So thank you for sharing that with us. As a reminder to everyone on this webinar, the program was recorded and you'll receive a link to AWCI's online program library following the conclusion of today's broadcast. So give us about an hour or so and you'll see that in your inboxes. So thank you, everyone. Stay well and stay safe.